Hey guys, tonight we delve into the unnerving quiet of a place that shouldn't exist. We're exploring the story of a hiker who, on a path they've walked 100 times, finds a new one, a silent, beckoning trail that leads into the heart of an impossible wilderness. Imagine that feeling, the total confidence of familiarity being stripped away, leaving you in a place the map says isn't there. A place where the rules of nature seem to have been suspended. The real horror here isn't a monster or a ghost. It's the subtle, creeping dread of a world that has quietly, fundamentally, come undone around you. It poses a question that sits heavy in the soul. What happens when the ground beneath your feet, the very reality you trust, decides to change its mind? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to see where you're all watching from tonight, so post your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It helps create a sense of community as we explore these unsettling spaces together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've always considered this place a sanctuary, the sprawling majesty of the Redwood National and State Parks. For 7 years running, you've made this pilgrimage in late October. It's a tradition, a cleansing ritual to mark the passage of another year. You come here to feel small, to be humbled by the ancient giants that have stood silent sentinel for millennia, long before the fleeting concerns of your own life ever flickered into existence. The air here is different. It's thick, rich with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the sharp, clean perfume of the redwoods themselves. It feels like breathing in history. This year is no different. You park your car in the same familiar lot, the gravel crunching under your tires like a welcome home. You pull on your worn-in hiking boots, the leather soft and molded to your feet, a silent testament to the hundreds of miles they've carried you. The trail you've chosen is an old friend, the Trillium Falls Trail. It's not the most strenuous, not the most dramatic, but it's yours. You know it's every twist and turn, every moss-covered log, every clearing where the sunlight spears through the dense canopy to dapple the fern-choked forest floor. The first hour is a symphony of comforting sensations, the rhythmic tap of your trekking poles against the packed earth, the distant chatter of a Steller's jay, its call a splash of abrasive color in the vast green silence, the whisper of the wind moving through the canopy hundreds of feet above you, a sound like a far-off ocean. You feel the tension in your shoulders, the residue of a year spent in fluorescent-lit offices and traffic-choked streets begin to dissolve. This is real. This is grounding. You've always been a cautious hiker, respectful of the wilderness. You've read the unsettling accounts, those quiet reports that bubble up from the National Park Service, the ones about people who vanish. Not tourists in flip-flops who wander off trail for a selfie, but seasoned hikers, experienced woodsmen, who are there one moment and gone the next. Often, they're found miles away in impossible terrain, or sometimes they're not found at all. It's a documented, chilling phenomenon. These clusters of disappearances in the wild places of the world, a statistical anomaly that no one can quite explain. The official reports list the cause as unknown, but the stories whispered among rangers and search and rescue teams speak of a strange quietness surrounding the events, an almost complete lack of evidence, as if the person simply ceased to be. There's an old, half-forgotten legend from the Yurok people, whose ancestral lands these are. It's not a story you'll find in any tourist brochure. It speaks of the forest having its own paths, its own intentions. They're not for humans, these paths. They are described not as physical trails of dirt and stone, but as seams in the world, places where the veil between what is and what could be is thin. The legend says they sometimes appear to the lost or the desperate, but to step on one is to accept an invitation from the forest itself, and the forest does not always intend for you to return. It was a way of explaining how people, even those who knew the woods intimately, could become lost forever, not just geographically, but dimensionally. But these are just stories, right? Intellectual curiosities you ponder from the safety of your well-marked trail. They are part of the mystique, the awe you feel for this place. but they don't feel like a tangible threat. The sun is warm on your face as you pause at a familiar switchback, taking a sip from your water bottle. Everything is as it should be. The world is solid, reliable. You know exactly where you are. You know the trail continues up and to the right, winding toward the gentle cascade of the falls. You've walked it a dozen times. But what does it truly mean to know a place like this? A forest that has stood for 20 million years, that has seen ice ages come and go, that operates on a timescale so vast it makes human history look like a flicker of lightning in a summer storm. Is our familiarity just an illusion, a comforting story we tell ourselves, so we don't have to confront the immense, untamed consciousness of the wilderness itself? Perhaps our maps and trails are just a polite suggestion, a set of rules the forest usually agrees to abide by, but is under no real obligation to follow. You lower your water bottle, your eyes tracing the familiar curve of the path ahead, and that's when you see it. Just to the left of the main trail, partially obscured by a curtain of ferns, is an opening. It's not a game trail, not a washout. It's a path. It looks deliberate, worn, as if countless feet have trodden it. Yet you know, with an unshakable certainty that chills you to the bone, that it has never been there before. It hangs there in the dappled light, an impossibility presented as a simple fact, the path. It doesn't branch off the main trail so much as it presents itself as an alternative, a choice that wasn't there a minute ago. Your mind, a machine built for patterns and logic, scrambles for an explanation. You even close your eyes for a few seconds, a hard, deliberate reset, expecting that when you open them, the familiar unbroken wall of ferns and redwood trunks will have reasserted itself. But when you look again, it's still there. If anything, it seems more real, more solid than the trusted trail you're standing on. The main trail, your friend, is a testament to human engineering. It's been carved and graded, reinforced with stone steps in the steeper sections, and edged with fallen logs to prevent erosion. It's a compromise with the wilderness, a negotiated truce. This new path is different. It looks like it belongs here. It seems less like a scar cut into the landscape, and more like a feature that grew from it. The earth is dark and loamy, perfectly packed, yet without the hard, worn-down shininess of a heavily used route. It curves gently into the trees, flanked by towering ferns that seem to part for it in a perfectly symmetrical, respectful bow. There are no stray roots to trip over, no loose rocks. It is, for lack of a better word, perfect. Too perfect. A thought flickers. Park service. Maybe they put it in. A new spur trail. A connector loop they haven't had a chance to signpost yet. But you dismiss this almost immediately. You know the protocols. New trails are announced, marked on maps at the trailhead, and blazed with colored markers on the trees. To open an unmarked trail in a park this vast would be an act of profound irresponsibility, an invitation for tourists to get lost. It makes no sense. You take a few cautious steps closer, your boots still firmly on the sanctioned ground. You peer down the new path's throat. The light seems different there. While the main trail is a mosaic of bright sun and deep shadow, this new corridor is bathed in a soft, even almost diffused luminescence, as if the canopy above has arranged itself precisely to illuminate the way forward. It's beckoning. There is a palpable sense of invitation emanating from it, a silent promise of something wonderful just around the bend. You think about the concept of desire paths, those unofficial trails worn into the ground by the cumulative force of human footsteps seeking a more direct route. You see them everywhere in cities, cutting across manicured lawns and parks. They are a physical record of collective impulse, often ugly and pragmatic. You once read a fascinating article by a landscape architect who described them not as vandalism, but as an honest conversation between the designers of a space and the people who actually use it. This path feels like that, but on a cosmic scale. It feels like the forest itself is having a conversation with you, offering the route your soul wants to take, not just your body. There's a strange, anecdotal account you stumbled upon years ago on a hiking forum, buried deep in a thread about strange experiences in the woods. A woman wrote about hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains and seeing a trail that wasn't on her map. She described it with the same sense of impossible perfection and an overwhelming, almost magical compulsion to follow it. She said it felt like the path was for her. She resisted, spooked by the strangeness of it, and turned back. For years, she wrote, she was haunted by the decision, by an unshakable feeling that she had turned away from her destiny. At the time, you dismissed it as fanciful New Age rambling. Now, standing here, you feel the same pull she described, a deep, resonant knowing that this path leads somewhere you are meant to go. The rational part of your brain is a frantic voice in a soundproofed room. It's screaming about safety, about common sense, about the dozens of stories of people who made one small, foolish decision and were never seen again. You have a map, you have a compass, you have a plan, and none of them include this. To step onto this path is to step off the map, to willingly walk into the unknown. But the silence from the path is more persuasive than your own internal warnings. It's a silence of profound peace, a stark contrast to the lively, if muted, sounds of the forest around you. It feels like a pocket of pure tranquility in a busy world. Just a short walk, you tell yourself. Just 50 yards or so. You'll go just to the first bend, satisfy your curiosity, and then turn back. You're an experienced hiker. You're not going to get lost 5 minutes from the main trail. It's a ridiculous thought. You can handle this. The story you'll have to tell will be worth the minor deviation. So why does the simple act of lifting your foot to cross that invisible threshold feel so monumental? Why are we, as a species, so profoundly drawn to mystery, even when it comes with a faint, unsettling scent of danger? Is it a deep-seated need to believe that there is more to this world than the mundane facts we're presented with, a hope that magic is real and that, just once, we might be invited to witness it? Your boot lands on the dark, soft earth of the new path. It makes no sound. The ground feels firm but yielding, like walking on dense moss. You take another step, and then another, leaving the familiar world behind you. The ferns rustle softly as they seem to close behind you, obscuring the entrance, obscuring your retreat. You are on the new path now, wholly and completely, and a profound change settles over everything. The change is not gradual, it is absolute. The moment your second boot settles onto the soft, dark earth of the new trail, the world's sound is switched off. It's as if someone threw a universal breaker switch. 1 second, the air was alive with the gentle symphony of the forest, the distant rustle of a breeze high in the canopy, the scolding of a squirrel, the almost subliminal hum of insect life. The next, there is nothing. A perfect, profound, and utterly deafening silence. Your first thought isn't supernatural. It's physiological. You swallow hard, trying to pop your ears, convinced a sudden change in pressure has deafened you. Nothing. You raise a hand close to your ear and snap your fingers. You hear it, yes, but the sound is thin, sterile, and wrong. It's a dry, clinical click, with no life, no resonance. It doesn't travel. It simply exists for a fraction of a second and then dies completely, absorbed by the oppressive quiet. You try humming, a low note in your throat. You can feel the vibration in your own chest, but the sound itself is a ghost. It has no echo, no reflection off the massive trees surrounding you. It's like being in a professional recording booth, a room designed to murder sound waves. But you are not in a room. You are in a vast, open forest, and the physics of this place are fundamentally broken. This phenomenon has a name among those who study the truly strange, the unexplainable encounters that occur in the wilderness. They call it the Oz factor. It's a documented, recurring detail in hundreds of accounts of high strangeness. People who claim to have seen UFOs, or had encounters with unidentifiable creatures, or, like you, stumbled into places that shouldn't be there, often report the same chilling prelude, a sudden, inexplicable blanket of silence that descends without warning. All the ambient sounds of nature just stop. Investigators of these mysteries see it as a telltale sign that the witness is no longer in our shared, mundane reality, but has crossed a threshold into something else. It is the palpable sensation of the veil dropping. You've always been fascinated by the concept of true silence. We live our lives bathed in a constant sea of noise. Even in the quietest rooms, there is the hum of electricity, the rush of your own blood in your ears, the faint creak of a house settling. True, absolute silence is something most humans will never experience. There's an anecdote about the composer John Cage visiting an anechoic chamber at Harvard University. Expecting to hear nothing, he was surprised to hear two sounds, a high and a low. The engineer told him the high was his nervous system in operation, the low was his blood in circulation. The story serves as a profound reminder that we are, ourselves, instruments of noise. But here, on this path, even those internal sounds are different. Your own frantic heartbeat, which you can feel thudding against your ribs, sounds oddly muffled in your ears. The silence is not an absence of sound. It's a presence. It has a weight, a texture. You can feel it pressing against your eardrums, a physical pressure that is deeply unnerving. It feels ancient and hungry. It is the silence of the void, of the space between stars, a silence that existed long before the first bird ever sang. A local, half-whispered story you once heard from a bartender in a nearby town comes back to you now, unbidden. He told you about his grandfather, a logger back in the 40s, who refused to work a certain section of the forest, known colloquially as the stillness. He said his grandfather and his crew went in one morning and the woods were just dead. No birds, no squirrels, not even the drone of a mosquito. He said the air felt heavy and that one of the men, a tough, hardened logger, dropped his axe and just started weeping for no reason. They left their equipment and walked out, refusing to ever go back. The company eventually wrote off the section as unworkable. The bartender had laughed it off as an old man's tall tale. It doesn't seem so funny now. This silence changes everything. The path that seemed so inviting, so perfect, now feels sinister. Its perfection is no longer beautiful. It's sterile. Its deliberate design no longer feels like an invitation. It feels like the meticulously constructed corridor of a trap. Every fiber of your being is now screaming at you to turn back. The curiosity that led you here has curdled into a cold, primal fear. But when you glance over your shoulder, the way back looks uncertain. The entrance you came through, that clear opening in the ferns, seems to have closed over. It's not an impenetrable wall, not yet, but it's indistinct, blurry, as if you're looking at it through old, warped glass. The main trail, your world, is fading. The path ahead, however, remains clear, steady, and bathed in that same soft, impartial light. And so you are faced with a terrifying question. What is the nature of this silence? Is this place somehow absorbing all sound? A freak acoustic anomaly of geography and foliage? Or have you been fundamentally altered? Perhaps the world is still making its noise. The birds are still singing. The wind is still whispering. But you have been unplugged. Which is the more terrifying thought? That you have stumbled into a dead spot in the universe, or that you, yourself, are no longer fully connected to it? You take a hesitant step forward, because it feels like the only direction left. You walk. It's the only thing to do. The silence is a physical companion now, a heavy cloak draped over your shoulders. With the path back already seeming to dissolve into memory, the way forward is the only tangible option left. You tell yourself you're just walking to the next bend, then the one after that. You're looking for a sign, any sign, that this bizarre corridor connects back to the real world. A trail marker, a discarded water bottle, the sound of other hikers, anything. The path maintains its unnerving perfection, a dark ribbon winding through the forest. But the forest itself is beginning to feel wrong. The great redwoods are still here, their scale still humbling, but the details at their feet are subtly alien. The ferns are a shade of green too deep, too vibrant, like a color you'd see on a screen that has been oversaturated. The bark of the trees, when you look closely, doesn't have the familiar fibrous furrowed texture. It's smoother, with faint overlapping patterns that look less like bark and more like scales. You touch one, and it feels cool and slightly yielding, like hard leather. An hour passes. Or at least, what your body tells you is an hour. Your legs begin to ache with the steady rhythm of the hike. A prickle of thirst starts in the back of your throat. But when you glance up through the canopy, the light hasn't changed. The sun, if it's even up there, hasn't moved a single degree. There are no shifting shadows, no change in temperature. The world is a static photograph, and you are the only thing moving through it. You come around a gentle curve and see a distinctive landmark. A massive fallen redwood lies across the forest floor just to the right of the path. Its bark has been stripped away by time, and its pale, smooth wood is covered in a spectacular growth of fungi, broad, shelf-like mushrooms in a brilliant, almost bloody shade of red. It's striking, and you pause for a moment, a flicker of morbid appreciation for its strange beauty. You make a mental note of it. A unique feature. That's good. It's a sign of progress. You keep walking. The silence presses in. The path curves and winds. Another hour, maybe. Your thirst is a real demand now, and the lack of change in the light is no longer a curiosity but a source of deep, gnawing anxiety. You round another bend in the path, and you see it. Just to the right of the trail, a massive, pale, fallen redwood, adorned with shelf-like fungi in a brilliant, bloody red. It's not possible. Your mind rejects it. It's a similar log, that's all. It has to be. You approach it cautiously, your heart starting to hammer a frantic rhythm against the wall of silence. You look for a difference. Any difference. The number of fungal growths, the pattern of cracks in the wood, the way the ferns grow around its base. But there is no difference. It is the exact same log. This feeling, this impossible environmental repetition, is a terrifyingly common theme in what are sometimes called glitch in the matrix reports or high strangeness events. People will describe driving down a road and passing the same diner 3 times in a row, or hiking a trail and finding themselves looping back to the same distinctively shaped rock over and over. It's often compared to a repeating background in an old cartoon or a poorly designed video game, where the world is a limited set of assets that are simply copied and pasted to create the illusion of a larger environment. The experience is profoundly disorienting because it attacks our fundamental assumption that space is contiguous and linear. Your brain, hardwired for navigation and survival, is being told a lie so fundamental that it starts to fray at the edges. There's a grim pioneer-era tale from the Ozarks, a region also known for strange disappearances, about a trapper they called Pacing Jack. The story goes that Jack went into a hollow to check his traps and never came out. Months later, a search party found him, or what was left of him. He was in the center of a small clearing, having apparently walked in a tight, perfect circle until he collapsed from exhaustion. Around the circle were hundreds of hash marks carved into the trees, all at the same height. The legend claims he had gotten caught in what the old folks called the Devil's Treadmill, a patch of woods that won't let you leave, that subtly turns you around and forces you to walk the same ground again and again until you go mad or your body gives out. A cold dread, colder than any autumn chill, seizes you. You have to be sure. You stop. With a trembling hand, you unlace your right boot. You take off your sock. It's a mundane, foolish-feeling action in this profoundly unmundane place. Then you walk over to that blood-red fungus on the fallen log. You wedge the sock deep into a crevice underneath the lowest shelf. It's a flag, a marker, an anchor to prove your sanity. You put your boot back on, your fingers clumsy with fear, and you walk. You walk with a desperate, mechanical purpose. You don't look at the scenery anymore. You just stare at the dark path under your feet. You walk for what feels like another hour, your whole body a knot of tension. The path curves. It winds. And then, up ahead, you see it. The log. You approach it like it's a venomous snake. You kneel, your knees cracking in the dead air. Your breath is held tight in your chest. You reach under the lowest shelf of fungus, your fingers brushing against the cool, slick surface. And there, tucked into the crevice, is your sock. The world seems to tilt on its axis. The quiet, analytical part of your mind is gone, replaced by a wave of pure, unreasoning panic. This isn't just a place where the sound is gone. This is a place where space is broken. It's a prison, an elegant, beautiful, silent, and inescapable prison. And you're left with the most terrifying question of all. Is this loop a feature of the physical place you've entered, or is the forest now inside your head? Replaying the same scene over and over on the screen of your own perception? Which cage is worse? The one you can see, or the one you can't? Panic is a physical thing. It's not an emotion, it's a chemical flood, a biological hijacking. The moment your fingers brushed against the familiar fabric of your own sock, tucked away in that impossible place, the last vestiges of your rational mind dissolved. It was a verdict, a confirmation of a sentence already passed. You are in a cage. You scrambled back from the log, stumbling, your breath coming in ragged, useless gasps in the dead air. Your only thought, a primal, one-word scream in your skull, out. You turn and you run. Not a jog, not a brisk walk, but a frantic, headlong flight back the way you came. The perfect path is no longer a comfort. Its flawlessness is a mockery. Its smooth, clear surface now feels like the polished floor of an abattoir, engineered for efficiency. You pound down the trail, your trekking poles forgotten, your arms pumping uselessly. The scenery, that repeating loop of 2 green ferns and scaly bark, is a nauseating blur. You half expect to see the pale log with its bloody fungi appear in front of you again, the forest's grim punchline to a joke you don't understand. Every instinct you've honed as a hiker is screaming at you. You're running recklessly, risking a fall, an injury that would be a death sentence out here. But the animal part of your brain has taken over, the part that knows only flight. It doesn't care about a twisted ankle. It cares about the tiger that is pacing just outside the firelight. The silence is the tiger. The looping trees are the tiger. The path itself is the tiger. You run until your lungs are fire, and your leg muscles are screaming bundles of acid. You trip on a non-existent root, a phantom from a real forest, and catch yourself, sprawling forward but managing to stay on your feet. The jolt is enough to break the panic's absolute hold. You stop, bent over, hands on your knees, trying to draw a breath that feels like it has substance. And in that moment of stillness, a new and even more profound terror creeps in. A subtle feeling. A wrongness. It's the feeling of being watched, but not by a creature. It's the feeling of the path itself watching you. Slowly, shakily, you turn around to look back the way you just came. You expect to see the dark ribbon of the trail stretching back towards the mocking, blood-colored log. But there is nothing. Where the path should be, there is only unbroken wilderness. A chaotic, indifferent jumble of ferns, fallen leaves, saplings, and moss-covered earth. It's not just that the path is gone. It's that there is no sign it was ever there. The ground you just sprinted over, the solid, reliable, perfectly packed dirt, has vanished as if it were a projection you've just run past the edge of. It hasn't been overgrown, it has been unwritten. The forest has erased it, healed itself instantly, leaving no seam, no scar, no trace that your desperate flight ever happened. A specific, chilling detail you once read from the archives of wilderness search and rescue operations flashes into your mind. It's a recurring element in the most baffling cases of missing persons, particularly those documented by people like David Paulides. A search team will be following a clear set of tracks in snow, in mud, in soft earth. The tracks are perfect, the stride is normal, and then they just stop. Not trail off, not get scuffed. They simply cease to exist in the middle of a clearing, with no other marks anywhere around. The person was walking, and then, in the space of a single step, they were no longer leaving a trace on the world. Investigators have described it as the single most unnerving thing they can encounter, because it violates every law of physics and logic. It's a quiet, undeniable testament to an utter impossibility. There's a local story, not from the indigenous people, but from the first white settlers who tried to log these woods in the 19th century. They spoke of a part of the forest they called the unraveling, a place that seemed to actively resist them. They'd spend a week clearing a path for their mules, and when they returned the next morning, it would be gone. Not just overgrown, but gone, as if the trees and the ferns had conspired overnight to weave the forest back together, leaving the loggers bewildered. Standing in front of an impenetrable wall of nature they swore they had conquered the day before. They saw it as an active, malevolent intelligence in the woods, something that didn't want them there and was subtly editing them out of its reality. You are standing at the edge of that edit. Ahead of you lies the looping, nonsensical prison path. Behind you, the world has unmade the trail, sealing your retreat. You are trapped on a razor's edge, between a nightmare you can see and a void you can't. You lift your boot and tentatively try to step back onto the space where the path was a moment ago. Your foot sinks into soft, damp leaf litter. It's real. The path is gone. The true horror of your situation crystallizes. You didn't just take a wrong turn. You're not just lost. You have been lured into a place that operates on a set of rules you cannot comprehend, and the door has just been locked behind you. And the question that bubbles up from the pit of your stomach is almost too much to bear. When the physical evidence of your immediate past is erased from the world, how can you trust that it happened at all? Was the path behind you ever real, or was it just a memory, a courtesy extended by the forest to lead you to this exact spot, a lie that has now served its purpose and been withdrawn? The disappearance of the path behind you changes the very nature of your fear. The frantic, hot panic of a trapped animal gives way to a cold, existential dread. It's the difference between being in a burning building and finding yourself adrift in the cold vacuum of space. One is a struggle for survival against a threat. The other is a confrontation with absolute nothingness. You are no longer just a hiker who is lost. You are an anomaly, a rogue data point in a system that has just demonstrated its ability to delete the evidence of your existence at will. You stand at this precipice, this dead end, where your recent past was just erased. Ahead of you, the path continues its sterile, looping journey through the alien woods. That way lies a maddening, repeating form of psychological torture. Behind you lies the unknown. Not the trailless wilderness you know from survival shows, but a wilderness that has actively demonstrated its hostility and its impossible nature. It's no longer a choice between a good option and a bad one. It's a choice between two different flavors of nightmare. For years, this forest has been your cathedral, a place of peace and reverence. The towering redwoods were benevolent giants, the quiet hum of life, a soothing balm. Now, that perception has been violently inverted. The forest is no longer a neutral backdrop for your human experience. It is a conscious entity, and you have trespassed into a part of it that does not welcome you. The silence is not peaceful, it is watchful. The immense trees are not guardians, they are prison bars. Their ancient, silent presence now feels like the cold, patient stare of a predator that has all the time in the world. This transformation of a familiar, comforting place into a source of terror is a core element of countless ghost stories and folk tales. Think of the house you grew up in suddenly feeling malevolent at night, the shadows in your own bedroom seeming to move with intent. Psychologically, it's one of the most potent forms of horror because it robs you of your sanctuary. It's an invasion. If you cannot feel safe in the place you consider your refuge, then you cannot feel safe anywhere. Your relationship with the world is broken at a foundational level. You remember reading a documented account from a woman who survived being lost for several days in the Australian bush. She wasn't pursued by anything. She didn't encounter any strange phenomena, but she described the turning point in her ordeal as the moment she stopped seeing the bush as a collection of trees and rocks and started seeing it as a single, living thing that was actively indifferent to her survival. She said the trees weren't for her, the shade wasn't for her, the water in a small creek wasn't for her. They were all just parts of a system she had blundered into, and that system would continue, unchanged, whether she lived or died. Her survival depended on her shedding the comforting illusion that nature was in any way a benevolent host. You are feeling that now, but magnified 1,000 times. This forest isn't indifferent. It feels intentional. There's an old, grim joke among deep-woods search and rescue teams. They say the forest has 3 rules. Rule 1, don't get lost. Rule 2, if you get lost, stay put. Rule 3, the forest doesn't care about the first 2 rules. It's a piece of gallows humor born from seeing the aftermath of too many bad decisions. but it contains a chilling truth. We impose our rules and expectations on the wilderness: maps, compasses, GPS signals, but the wilderness has its own ancient, inscrutable laws, and sometimes they override ours without warning or explanation. You are standing in a place where the forest's rules are the only ones that apply. The path behind you is gone. The path ahead is a lie. This leaves only one option, the one that every survival manual screams at you never to take: leave the trail. Bushwhacking in a normal forest is risky enough, a sure way to get turned around, to injure yourself, to become truly lost. But here, in this place, stepping off the sterile, perfect path feels like a monumental act of rebellion. It feels like refusing to play the game any longer. It's a desperate gamble, born of the realization that playing by the forest's apparent rules, following the path, is a guaranteed loss. The path is the trap. The only hope, however faint, lies in rejecting the trap itself. You look away from the manicured trail and into the chaotic, menacing tangle of the woods. It looks impenetrable, hostile, but it also looks real in a way the path doesn't. It's messy, it's random, it's alive. The question that solidifies in your mind is one of agency. Have you had any real choice since you first saw this impossible trail? Was the invitation really a choice, or was it a compulsion laid upon you? Was your curiosity your own, or was it planted in your mind? The feeling that you are a pawn in a game whose rules you don't know is perhaps the most terrifying part of this entire experience. To step off this path is to make a move that isn't on the board, to declare that you are still a player, not just a piece. It may be the last decision you ever make, but it will be yours. With a deep, shuddering breath that does nothing to calm the tremor in your hands, you turn your back on the perfect, silent path. You face the primordial, intimidating chaos of the forest floor. You take one step, and then another, pushing through the strangely vibrant ferns, your boots sinking into the soft, untrodden earth. The woods immediately begin to resist, branches snagging at your clothes, vines tripping your feet. But with every difficult step, a tiny, defiant spark of hope ignites in the cold darkness of your fear. You have chosen your own path. Now you just have to pray it leads somewhere. Pushing through the undergrowth is punishing, and it is silent. Every step is a fight. Thorny vines, unseen in the deep gloom, snag your sleeves and tear at your skin, but you hear no rip of fabric. You shoulder your way through thickets of ferns that stand as tall as you, but there is no rustling, no whisper of displaced fronds. Your feet, which strode so easily upon the phantom path, now struggle for purchase on the uneven, root-snarled ground. You stumble, you grunt with effort, but the sounds are swallowed whole by the oppressive, weighted stillness. The sheer physical exertion in this vacuum of sound is profoundly disorienting. It's like fighting an enemy in a dream, where your blows land with no impact. In this sensory void, your mind, starved of external stimuli, begins to feed on itself. It dredges up memories and stories with a frantic, desperate energy, trying to build a framework, any framework, to contain the madness of your reality. And what surfaces from the deep archives of your memory is a collection of local lore you'd once consumed as idle curiosity, as regional flavor. Now it feels like a history lesson you failed to study for, a final exam for which you are fatally unprepared. You remember sitting in a dusty second-hand bookstore in a small town just outside the park boundaries, flipping through a self-published book of local history. It was full of grainy photographs and rambling anecdotal accounts from the last century. One chapter was different. It wasn't about logging or fishing or the founding of the town. It was titled, simply, The Walkaways. The term wasn't used to describe people who left for a new job or a better life. It was a specific, local euphemism for a certain type of disappearance. The walkaways were people who, by all accounts, had no reason to leave. They had families, jobs, routines, but one day, they would just walk away. A farmer would head out to mend a fence on the edge of his property and never come back. A housewife would go to fetch water from the well and vanish. The book described these events not with the panic of a suspected crime, but with a kind of resigned, fearful reverence. It said the walkaways were never people who were unhappy or desperate. They were often the opposite: quiet, content, thoughtful individuals who seemed to have a deep, unspoken connection to the landscape itself. They were dreamers. People who, as one old-timer was quoted, always seemed to be listening to a tune no one else could hear. The most chilling and specific account you recall was from the historical records of a failed settlement deep in the redwood interior, a place called Hemlock Stand, that was abandoned in the 1922nd after a string of such events. The official cause for the town's failure was listed as a particularly harsh winter and a logging accident, but a surviving community ledger, which the book reprinted excerpts from, told a different story. It detailed 5 disappearances in as many months. A young man, Thomas Miller, was seen walking towards the forest edge at dusk, smiling, as if going to meet a lover. He was never seen again. An older woman, Elspeth Reed, a reclusive herbalist, simply wasn't in her cabin one morning. Her door was unlocked, and a full pot of stew was cold on the stove. The ledger keeper didn't write of searches or foul play. He wrote, "The wood took another. It calls to the quiet ones. We who are loud with our saws and our lives are not wanted here. This place wants silence." That phrase resonates in the dead air around you like a struck bell. This place wants silence. You are in the heart of that silence now. The legend of the walkaways didn't frame it as an abduction. It was stranger than that. It was described as a seduction. The forest offered something so compelling that people would willingly abandon everything they knew and loved to answer its call. And what about you? A yearly pilgrimage to this specific park, a ritual to connect with something ancient and quiet, a feeling of sanctuary, of being humbled by the green stillness. Are you not one of the quiet ones? The path didn't appear to a carload of rowdy tourists. It appeared to you. It felt, as that woman on the hiking forum had written, like it was for you. The terror of being trapped begins to subtly shift into something far more complex and insidious. The fear that you are a victim is being poisoned by the question of whether you are, in fact, a candidate. What could a place like this possibly offer that would be worth the price of your entire world? Peace? An escape from the noise and complexity of modern life? Or is it something more profound? The legends never specified what lay at the end of that final walk. It was always just an exit, a door out of the world. And it leaves you with a question that is almost as terrifying as the silence itself. Are you fighting your way out of a prison? Or are you foolishly trying to escape from your own salvation? Is the struggle through this undergrowth a heroic act of survival? Or is it the thrashing of a soul refusing a destiny it doesn't have the courage to accept? As you push deeper into the chaotic embrace of the woods, something new begins to bleed into the edges of the profound silence. It is not a sound. Sound requires air, vibration, physics. This is something else entirely. It starts at the very threshold of your perception, a faint, staticky presence in your mind. You stop, leaning against the smooth, scaly bark of a redwood, straining to understand what you're experiencing. It's like the ghost of a sound, a phantom signal on a radio tuned to a dead frequency. It is a whisper, or rather, the shape of a whisper, with all the auditory content scooped out. There are no words, no consonants, no vowels. There is only the sibilant, rising and falling cadence of speech, delivered directly into your consciousness. Has, 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 shas, shas. It's intimate, as if someone is murmuring directly into your ear. Yet, it is also impossibly distant. It seems to emanate from no specific direction, coming instead from the trees themselves, from the air, from the back of your own skull. The experience is deeply violating. It bypasses your ears, your body's natural defenses against unwanted noise, and sets up residence inside your head. You try to shake it off, to focus on the physical reality of the forest around you, the ache in your muscles, the sting of the scratches on your arms, but the whispers are persistent, weaving themselves into the fabric of your thoughts. This phenomenon, the perception of disembodied, indecipherable whispering, is a recurring and deeply unsettling element in paranormal accounts across cultures and centuries. It's a staple of classic ghost stories, of course, but it's also documented in more modern, stranger contexts. Astronauts on long, isolated missions have reported it. Deep cave explorers, sealed in absolute silence and darkness miles beneath the earth, have described hearing soft, conversational murmuring. The scientific explanation is auditory pareidolia, the brain's tendency to create patterns out of random noise, or the Ganzfeld effect, where a lack of stimulation causes the brain to invent its own. But you are not in a sensory deprivation tank. You are in a place that feels anciently, powerfully present. This does not feel like a hallucination. It feels like a broadcast you are finally, terrifyingly, tuned in to receive. A particularly disturbing anecdote you once read comes to mind. It was from a collection of oral histories from psychiatric nurses. One nurse recounted the story of a patient, a brilliant linguist, who was admitted after a complete psychotic break. The man's obsession, the thing that had driven him mad, was what he called the background language. He was convinced he could hear a constant stream of unintelligible speech underlying all the normal sounds of the world. He claimed it wasn't a human language, that its syntax and phonetics were utterly alien, but that he could feel its grammar, its intent. His doctors called it schizophrenia. He called it the static of reality, the raw, unfiltered signal of consciousness itself, a language not meant for human ears to process. He said it was everywhere, but that quiet places, wild places, were where the signal was strongest. The whispers in your head seem to match that description perfectly. They have a structure. You can feel the rise and fall of what sound like questions, the emphatic cadence of what feel like statements, the trailing off of what feel like thoughts left unfinished. It is a conversation, or perhaps a monologue, and you are the unwilling audience. The feeling is one of immense, ancient intelligence, but one that is utterly indifferent to your comprehension. You are not being spoken to. You are simply in the presence of something that is speaking. The whispers intensify as you stand there, the phantom sibilants growing more complex, more layered. It begins to feel less like one voice and more like many, a soft, overlapping chorus of shapeless secrets. It's mesmerizing and terrifying in equal measure. A part of you, the part that is still human and sane, wants to scream to drown it out. Another part, the part that has been touched by the strangeness of this place, finds itself listening, trying to understand. The temptation to just stand here, to close your eyes and let this tide of non-sound wash over you, to try and decipher its meaning, is almost overwhelming. It feels like if you could just learn this language, you would understand everything: where you are, why you're here, the nature of the forest, the meaning of the silent path. And that is the most dangerous thought you have had yet. It is the seduction of the walkaways, presented in a new form, not a perfect path, but a perfect secret knowledge. The forest is offering you its scripture. But what is the price of that enlightenment? To understand a language not meant for a human mind would require that mind to be fundamentally rewritten. And what would be left of you after such an alteration? Would you still be you? Or would you become just another voice in the static, another whisper in the silent trees, a cautionary tale for the next traveler who stumbles upon a path that isn't there? The question freezes you in place. How do you escape a trap that is being woven from the threads of your own consciousness? The open question that rises from this new layer of horror is one of purpose. Why this elaborate, terrifying theater? If these entities, these watchers, wanted you gone, they seem to possess the ability to simply remove you. The forest has already demonstrated its power to alter reality. So why this game? Is it a warning? A test? Or is it something far more alien and incomprehensible? Perhaps this isn't about you at all. Perhaps you have simply stumbled into the middle of a process, a routine, as natural to this place as photosynthesis is to a normal forest, and the watchers are merely the enzymes that guide the reaction along. Are you the subject of this experiment, or just a raw material being processed? The distinction feels critically important and utterly unknowable. The realization that you are being herded is a profound violation. Your desperate act of rebellion, Stepping off the path into the wild tangle was not an escape. It was merely a transition from a paved cell to a padded one. The whispers in your head are the warden's murmurings, and the shadow flickers in your periphery are the guards, ensuring you don't stray from a predetermined invisible track. The illusion of free will was the cruelest trick yet. Your feet are yours, but the path they walk is not. A new kind of anger begins to burn through the cold fog of your fear, a hot, defiant rage. It's the anger of the mouse that, realizing the maze has no exit, decides to start chewing through the walls. It might be a futile gesture, but it is a gesture of defiance. You will not be hurted. You will not be managed. But how do you defy an enemy you cannot see? In a place that rewrites its own geography, you can't trust your senses. The light is wrong, the silence is full of noise, the scenery repeats itself, and your own eyes show you phantoms in the periphery. You need an anchor, something objective, something mechanical and impartial that is not subject to the forest's psychological games. Your compass. The thought is a flare of hope in the darkness. You stop, shrugging off your small day pack. Your movements are clumsy, your fingers stiff and uncooperative. You fumble with the zipper, the simple act feeling monumental in the oppressive stillness. There, in a side pocket, is the compass, a simple, reliable baseplate model. It's not fancy, but it has never failed you. It is a piece of the real world, a tool governed by the steady, predictable laws of planetary magnetics. The forest can play tricks on your eyes and ears, but it cannot bend the Earth's magnetic field. It cannot lie to a magnetized needle. You decide on a direction, west. Before you entered this nightmare, you were on the western side of the park. The Pacific Ocean is out there, somewhere. If you can just walk west, consistently west, you must eventually hit a road, a coastline, something. The sun, frozen in the sky, is no help, but the compass will be your guide. It will be your truth. With trembling hands, you lift it, holding it flat in your palm as you've done 1,000 times. You wait for the red-tipped needle to settle, to find its home, to point you towards the magnetic north and grant you the power to determine west. The needle does not settle. It swings, lazily at first. Then, with increasing speed, it spins, a frantic, silent pirouette. Round and round it goes, a dizzying red blur. It is not broken. A broken compass needle sticks or drifts. This is an active, violent, impossible motion. It's as if you're standing on the North Pole itself, but the spinning is too fast, too wild. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stops. The needle quivers for a moment and then points, with unnerving absolute certainty, directly at your own chest. You turn your body. The needle turns with you, always pointing at your heart. This is a known, if deeply strange, phenomenon in the lore of high strangeness. Fortean researchers and investigators of what are called window areas, places where the paranormal seems to manifest with unusual frequency, have documented dozens of accounts of compasses going haywire. They spin, they reverse polarity, or, most chillingly, they are drawn to the person holding them, as if the strange energy of the place has turned the hiker themselves into the new magnetic pole. It's a sign that the fundamental laws you relied on have been locally suspended. Your hope doesn't just die, it's murdered. The compass, your last bastion of objective reality, has become another tool of the forest torment. It is actively lying to you, mocking you with its impossible behavior. And a story surfaces in your memory, something you overheard from a park ranger talking to a tourist about the park's odd corners. He mentioned the plight of the first land surveyors in the 1802nd. They struggled to map this region, their charts and records filled with inconsistencies. They would survey a line one day, and the next day their instruments would give a completely different reading from the same spot. Their journals blamed it on iron deposits, but their letters home, and the legends of the local tribes they interacted with, spoke of something else. They called it the coyote's lie, a malevolent spirit or intelligence in the land that took pleasure in scrambling a man's sense of direction, in making him walk in circles. In leading him to his doom with false promises, they believed it could smell your desperation and feed on your hope. You are holding the coyote's lie in your hand. Everything is a lie. The path, the silence, the shadows, the compass. Every tool you have to navigate the world has been corrupted. You are stripped bare. There is no north. There is no west. There is only the here and the now, a prison cell whose walls are your own corrupted senses. You close your eyes. The whispers in your head rise to a fever pitch, a chorus of sibilant, mocking static. The feeling of being watched by the shadow flickers is a physical pressure on your skin. They are waiting to see what you will do now that your last tool is broken. They are waiting to herd you again. So you make your desperate gamble. It is an act of pure, blind faith, or perhaps pure, blind spite. You stow the lying compass. You will not look at it again. You turn your back on the direction the shadows last seemed to be nudging you. You will not be herded. You pick a landmark, a particularly tall, dark tree that looks no different from the 1,000 others, and you decide, with no evidence whatsoever, that that way is west. It is a choice made in defiance of all data, a declaration of will against a universe that has told you your will is irrelevant. This leads to the final, terrifying question. When you are trapped in a system designed to control your perception, is a choice made in pure defiance truly your own? Or is it simply the last, most desperate action the system has accounted for, the final, pre-planned turn in the maze before the end? You begin to walk, one painful, silent step at a time, towards your chosen tree, gambling your life on an answer you can never know. The fire of your defiance, the rage that propelled you away from the lying compass, burns down to embers. All that's left is a dull, aching heat. You are still walking toward your chosen tree, your self-declared west, but the action is purely mechanical now. It's the twitching of a severed nerve. Hope is a heavy, cumbersome thing to carry, and with every silent, laborious step, you can feel its weight increasing, its straps cutting into the raw flesh of your soul. It would be so much easier to just set it down. This is the true battleground, not the physical forest with its weird trees and phantom trails, but the internal landscape of your own mind. The place is not just attacking your senses, it's methodically dismantling your sanity. The process is slow, insidious, and devastatingly effective. It begins with your memory. The world you came from, the car, the job, the familiar face in the mirror feels increasingly distant and unreal. The memories are like old photographs, faded and curling at the edges. You try to conjure a clear image of your apartment, your street, but the details are blurry. The vivid, all-encompassing reality is the forest. The feeling of the cool, leathery bark, the oppressive weight of the silence, the incessant, shapeless whispers in your head. This place is becoming your new baseline, your new normal. The real world is starting to feel like a pleasant but half-forgotten dream you had long ago. Then comes the erosion of self. The whispers are no longer just a background annoyance. They are woven into the very fabric of your thoughts. You feel a pang of thirst and a question surfaces. Is that your body telling you it needs water? Or is it a suggestion planted by the whispers? You decide to change direction slightly, to aim for a gap between two ferns, and you have to wonder if the decision was truly yours, or if a peripheral flicker of shadow herded you into it. Your internal monologue, that private stream of consciousness that defines you as an individual, is no longer private. It's a polluted river, and you can no longer tell which currents are yours and which are flowing from the malevolent intelligence of the woods. The final stage of the assault is the creep of a profound, soul-crushing apathy. The terror and the anger that kept you moving were exhausting emotions. They burned a lot of fuel. Now, the tank is running empty. A part of you, a weary, logical part, simply asks, why bother? Why fight so hard against a place that can rewrite reality at will? Why struggle through these thorny vines when you could just lie down on the soft, mossy ground and rest? The thought is no longer terrifying. It's seductive. The idea of surrender feels like relief. There is a documented, clinical name for this phenomenon: psychogenic death. more colloquially known as give-up-itis. It is a real and terrifying condition observed in prisoners of war, shipwreck survivors, and people in extreme survival situations. It is not suicide. It is a slow, quiet surrender of the will to live. It usually begins with social withdrawal and listlessness, followed by a profound apathy and a lack of initiative. The person stops trying to help themselves. They refuse food and water, not out of protest, but out of a simple lack of interest. They lose all spark, and within days, with no discernible physical cause, they die. Medical examiners describe it as a person simply believing so completely in their own doom that their body follows their mind's command and shuts down. You remember a chilling anecdote attached to this condition about a psychiatrist studying the accounts. He said the most dangerous moment is not when the person is panicked or afraid. It's when they become calm. A placid, serene expression comes over their face. They've made a decision. They've accepted their fate. They have given up the fight. He called it the final piece. Looking down at your own scratched, bleeding hands, you feel a strange sense of detachment, as if they belong to someone else. You feel the first hints of that final piece. The idea of just stopping, of sitting down and letting the whispers wash over you, of letting the shadows do what they will, feels like coming home. The old loggers in this region had their own name for it. They didn't call it give-up-itis. They called it the green quiet. It was a form of madness they associated with men who spent too much time alone in the deep woods. It wasn't a violent insanity. The men didn't rave or see monsters. They just faded. They'd become slow, placid, their eyes fixed on the middle distance. They would stop talking, stop eating, and eventually they would just wander off into the trees, calm and purposeful, never to be seen again. They were another kind of walk-away, not seduced by a path, but slowly and gently absorbed by the forest's overwhelming presence, until they forgot how to be human. You stumble over a root, falling hard to your knees. The impact barely registers. You stay there, on all fours, the damp earth cold against your palms. It would be so easy to just lie down, to rest. This leaves you with the most fundamental question of all, a question about the very nature of sanity. We define sanity as a correct perception of reality. But what if reality changes? If you are in a new world that operates on new laws, is clinging to the laws of the old world a sign of sanity? Or is it a fatal inability to adapt? Perhaps true madness in this place is to keep fighting, to keep trusting in things like West and memory and self. Perhaps the only sane thing to do is to let go, to accept the new rules, to learn the whispers, to join the shadows, to embrace the green quiet. The fight is almost gone from you now. And in the silence, a single, clear thought that feels like your own, but probably isn't, rises to the surface. It's time to rest. You are on your knees in the silent, alien forest. The green quiet is seeping into your bones, a cold and calming poison. The will to fight has been leached away, replaced by a profound, almost blissful apathy. Your mind, no longer struggling, is a placid lake, and the whispers are just soft ripples on its surface. You are preparing to lie down, to accept the final piece, to let the forest have you. And then your hand touches it. Buried under a thick blanket of moss and leaf litter, your palm presses against something that does not belong. It is not the soft give of earth or the rough texture of wood. It is hard, unyielding, and strangely warm. The sensation is so alien to this environment that it cuts through the fog of your apathy like a shard of glass. Curiosity, a spark you thought long extinguished, flickers to life. With a slow, dreamlike motion, you begin to scrape away the layers of damp detritus. The moss comes away in thick, satisfying mats. Underneath is stone. You clear more, your movements becoming more urgent. It is a large, flat-topped stone, roughly the size of a small table, and its surface is unnaturally smooth, almost polished. It is a deep, dark gray, like basalt, but shot through with faint, pulsing veins of a color you can't quite name, a bioluminescent green gold that seems to shift and glow with a soft internal light. This is no random boulder. It is a landmark, but it is an impossible one. You have been walking or have been herded for what feels like an entire day through a repeating, nonsensical landscape. There have been no unique features, save for the mocking, recurring log. This stone is singular. It is a new element in the equation. It is a change in the rules of the game. You place your full palm flat against its surface. The warmth is undeniable. A low, steady heat that seems to radiate from deep within the stone. But there's more to it than just heat. There is a vibration. A low, subliminal hum that you feel more in the bones of your arm than you hear with your ears. It is a deep, resonant frequency, like the purr of some impossibly large animal. The hum seems to push back against the whispers in your head, creating a small pocket of mental clarity around you. The incessant, sibilant static recedes, muted by the stone's powerful, bass note presence. Megalithic structures and strangely placed stones are, of course, a cornerstone of mysteries all over the world. From the organized grandeur of Stonehenge to the thousands of isolated, enigmatic standing stones and dolmens scattered across Europe's ancient landscapes. Historians and archaeologists have theories. They were calendars. They were sacrificial altars. They were territorial markers. But the folklore, the stories told by the people who lived for centuries in the shadows of these stones, often speaks of them in a different way. They weren't just rocks. They were called channel stones, listening stones, or most evocatively, anchor stones. The legends claimed they were anchors that held the world in place, points of stability that prevented reality from drifting. They were said to be places of power, often dangerous, but they were also places where the world was solid, where the rules were consistent. A hyper-specific anecdote you once read in a book about Earth mysteries comes to mind. It was the account of a dowser, a man who claimed he could find underground water using divining rods. He was exploring a remote part of the Welsh countryside, an area known for its confusing landscape where hikers frequently got lost. He said his rods went wild, spinning and tugging in every direction, much like your compass. He was about to give up when he stumbled upon a single, small, standing stone, no more than 3 feet high, half hidden in a grove of trees. He said that the moment he stepped within a few feet of it, his dowsing rods dropped, becoming perfectly still and unresponsive. The noisy, chaotic energy of the landscape was completely nullified in the stone's presence. He described it as an eye of the storm, a tiny island of absolute normalcy in a sea of geographic strangeness. This stone feels like that. It is an anchor. It is real. Its warmth is real. Its hum is real. It is a piece of hard, physical truth in a world of illusion and psychological warfare. The sense of profound relief is so overwhelming it brings you to tears. The weeping is silent in this place, but the hot, wet tracks on your cold cheeks are a grounding, physical sensation. The whispers have not gone away entirely, but they are held at bay, their indecipherable chatter unable to penetrate the zone of influence created by the stone's low hum. The ever-present flickers of the shadow people are also gone from your periphery. You are, for the first time since stepping off the main trail, truly alone and unobserved. You are in a sanctuary. What is this object? Was it placed here? Did it grow? Is it a piece of technology or a geological anomaly? The questions are potent, but for the first time, they are not terrifying. They are questions born of wonder, not dread. Your journey to this point has been a descent into a form of hell where your own mind was the primary weapon used against you. This stone has given you a shield. It has given you a moment to think, to breathe, to be yourself again. But the largest question remains, hanging in the quieted air around the humming stone. Is this anchor a refuge, a place to recover for the next stage of the fight? Or is it the final destination the shadows were herding you to all along? The sanctuary of the humming stone is a temporary reprieve, and you know it. The forest, this vast, sentient prison, is patient. It has receded, allowing you this moment of clarity, but you can feel it waiting just beyond the invisible perimeter of the stone's influence. The whispers are a quiet hiss at the edge of your hearing. The shadows are coiled in the gloom just past the circle of your reclaimed sanity. You can't stay here forever. The apathy that nearly consumed you has been replaced by a cold, clear urgency. The stone gave you back your mind. Now you have to use it. You drink the last of your water, the bottle having been in your pack all this time, forgotten during the long nightmare. The liquid is a shock of cold reality in your throat. You eat a crushed granola bar. The taste gritty and sweet and overwhelmingly real. You are a physical being, in a physical body, and you need fuel. You need a plan. The path that vanished, the looping scenery, the hurting shadows, the lying compass, it was all designed to break you down psychologically, to make you surrender. But it was also a system. And every system, no matter how alien, has patterns, has rules. The appearance of this stone is a new piece of data. It's the one thing that has broken the loop. It is the key. What if the goal was never just to make you give up? What if the goal was to get you here, to this specific spot? The long, terrifying ordeal wasn't the trap itself, but the delivery mechanism. A brutal psychological filter designed to ensure that only a person who was completely stripped of their own will, their own direction, could find this place. You didn't find the stone by navigating. You found it by giving up. The moment you fell to your knees in surrender was the moment you arrived. This realization is both terrifying and empowering. It implies a level of intelligence and purpose that is staggering. You were a package, and this stone is the delivery address. But it also means that, for now, the journey here might be over. The hurting might be done, which means there might be a way out. There is a documented psychological phenomenon known as inattentional blindness. The most famous experiment involves showing people a video of a basketball game and asking them to count the passes. During the video, a person in a gorilla suit walks slowly through the middle of the scene. A startlingly high percentage of people, focused on their task, never see the gorilla at all. Their reality is filtered by their expectation and their focus. What if this forest operates on a similar principle? You were so focused on the horror, on the path, on the whispers, that you were blind to the exit. You were looking for a trail, a signpost, a landmark from your world. You were trying to see a path, but what if the way out isn't a path at all? You remember a detail from those old Yurok legends, the ones about the seams in the world. The story said those hidden paths don't appear when you are looking for them. They appear when you are looking for something else, or when you are not looking at all. They reveal themselves only in moments of distraction, of surrender, of a quiet mind. The stone has given you a quiet mind. So you try a new experiment. You stand up, your legs shaky but strong. You turn your back on the humming stone, your anchor. You face the oppressive, silent woods. You do not try to find a path. You do not try to navigate. You do not choose a direction. You simply look. You soften your gaze, letting your eyes relax, taking in the whole chaotic scene at once without focusing on any particular detail. You are not looking for a way out. You are simply observing the state of the forest. And that's when you see it. It's not a trail. It's not an opening. It is a subtle distortion in the air, a slight shimmer, like heat haze off summer asphalt. It's a patch of space about 20 yards away, nestled between two massive redwoods, where the world seems to be watery. The trees behind it are slightly warped, their lines bending as if seen through a flawed pane of glass. It is a detail you would never have noticed while panicked or while actively searching. You would have dismissed it as a trick of your tired eyes. But now, in this state of calm observation, it stands out as the only thing that is moving in this static, silent world. It is a seam. It is the gorilla in the room. What is the nature of perception? Do we see the world as it is, or do we see a version of it that has been heavily edited by our own brains, by our expectations, by our fears? This question lies at the heart of so many philosophical debates, but here, it is a practical matter of survival. This place has weaponized your perception against you. The only way to win is to change the way you see, to stop imposing your idea of what a path should look like, and to accept that it might be something else entirely, something as subtle as a shimmer in the air. You take a step away from the humming stone, The whispers begin to creep back into the edges of your mind. A faint, questioning hiss. You ignore them. You keep your eyes fixed on the shimmer. You walk towards it, your heart pounding a new rhythm, not of fear, but of profound, terrifying hope. The forest seems to hold its breath. The shadows in the periphery are still. It feels like the entire, vast intelligence of this place is watching you, waiting to see if you understand the final piece of the puzzle. You walk towards the heat haze, towards the warp in reality. You lift your foot, and you prepare to step through the looking glass. You take the final step. The world does not shatter. There is no wrenching, violent transition. One moment you're in the deep, silent gloom of the alien forest, and the next, you are stumbling forward onto familiar ground, the impact of your boot on the packed earth making a loud, wonderfully ordinary thud. The sound is the first thing that hits you. It's a tidal wave, a glorious, chaotic symphony. A Stellar's jay is squawking indignantly from a branch nearby. A soft breeze is rustling the leaves of the ferns, a sound like a gentle sigh. In the distance, you can hear the faint, muffled sound of human voices, laughing. The world has been returned to you, with its full, messy, beautiful soundtrack. You gasp. A huge, shuddering intake of air that feels like your first breath, and the sound of it is raw and real in your own ears. You are standing on the Trillium Falls Trail, your old friend. You look around, your senses overwhelmed, trying to recalibrate to reality. The light is normal, a dappled mix of late afternoon sun and shadow that shifts and dances with the wind. The trees are just trees, their bark a familiar, fibrous red-brown. The ferns are a normal shade of green. Everything is exactly as it should be. You turn around, your heart hammering, to look back at the place you just stepped from. You expect to see the shimmer, the seam, the impossible door, but there is nothing. There is only a dense, impassable thicket of huckleberry bushes and redwood saplings. There is no sign of a path, no hint of a gateway, no trace of the alien world that existed a single footstep behind you. It's just the woods, normal and impenetrable. A profound wave of dizziness washes over you, and you drop to your knees. The solid, real ground beneath you is the most comforting thing you have ever felt. You run your hands over the dirt, the fallen leaves, the small, sharp rocks. It's real. It's all real. The sheer, visceral relief is a physical force, so powerful it feels like it might break you. This experience, this sudden and inexplicable return to normalcy, is a rare but recurring feature in the strangest missing persons cases where the individual is found alive. A hiker will vanish from a trail, a massive search will be launched, and days later, they will reappear back on that same trail, disoriented and dehydrated, but otherwise unharmed. They often have no memory of the intervening time, or their memories are a confusing, dreamlike jumble that they themselves cannot trust. To the search parties, it seems impossible. They have combed that very section of trail a dozen times. There was no one there. The person simply wasn't there. And then they were. It's a detail that is often left out of official reports because it defies all logical explanation. There's a strange, modern piece of urban folklore that has sprung up on the internet, the idea of no clipping out of reality, a term borrowed from video games. No clipping is a glitch where a player character passes through a solid wall or falls through the floor of the game world. People now use this term to describe moments of extreme spatial or temporal weirdness in their own lives, finding themselves in a room they don't remember entering, or experiencing a sudden, jarring jump in location. It's a new language for an old fear, that the world we perceive as solid and reliable is actually a construct, a program, and that sometimes there are bugs in the code. You didn't just get lost in the woods. You no-clipped into a different level, and then, somehow, you glitched your way back. You sit there on the trail for what could be minutes or an hour, just breathing, just being. The sound of those distant voices gets closer, and soon, a family comes around the bend. A mother, a father, two young kids with brightly colored jackets. They see you, sitting on the ground, looking disheveled. The father gives you a friendly, slightly concerned look. "You all right there, buddy?" he asks. You try to answer, but your voice is a broken croak. You just nod. The mother herds the children past you, giving you a wide berth. "Don't stare," she whispers to her son, a sound you hear with perfect, painful clarity. They see a strange man, dirty and possibly drunk, sitting in the middle of their pleasant afternoon hike. They have no idea what you have just crawled out of. They have no idea that inches from their reality, there is a silent, waiting world of impossible trees and watching shadows. And that is the quiet, lingering horror. You are back, but you have brought a terrible knowledge with you. The world is not what they think it, Island. The veil is thin, and sometimes you don't even know you've passed through it until you're already on the other side. You are safe now, but the definition of safe has been irrevocably changed for you. How can you ever truly feel secure again, knowing how easily the floor can just drop out from beneath your feet? The prison is gone, but its ghost will haunt you forever. The walk back to your car is a surreal dream. Every familiar landmark on the Trillium Falls Trail, the mossy log you always step over, the clearing with the view of the valley, the switchback where you first saw the impossible path, is a ghost of a former self. They are the same objects, the same places, but your perception of them is forever tainted. The comforting nostalgia is gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling suspicion. You look at the familiar forest, and you can't help but see the code underneath the simulation. The fragile artifice that you now know can be peeled back at a moment's notice. You reach the trailhead parking lot just as the real, physical sun is beginning to set, casting long, golden shadows across the gravel. Your car is there, exactly as you left it. The sight of it, this mundane hunk of metal and plastic, is so powerfully normal that it almost brings you to your knees again. You fumble for your keys, your hands still shaking with a tremor that seems to have taken up permanent residence in your nervous system. The key slides into the lock. The door opens. You sink into the driver's seat, the familiar scent of stale coffee and dusty upholstery filling your lungs. You have returned to your world, but the silence from the other place has followed you. It's not the absolute, physics-defying void from the path. It's a quieter, more insidious thing. It's a dead space in the middle of a conversation. It's the moment you wake up in the middle of the night, and the house is too quiet, and for a split second, you're back in the woods. You find yourself turning off the car radio, driving in silence, because the noise of the world feels intrusive, abrasive. You have become accustomed to the stillness, and a part of you, terrifyingly, misses its profound, empty purity. The green quiet has left its stain on your soul. There's a well-documented phenomenon among people who have had near-death experiences or other profoundly transformative traumatic events. They often speak of a feeling of disconnection from their former lives, a sense of being an outsider looking in. They call it a loss of common currency. The everyday concerns, the small talk, the dramas and anxieties that occupy most people's lives seem trivial, meaningless. How do you talk about a stressful day at the office with someone when you spent what felt like an eternity being herded by silent, shadowy things in a place where your compass needle spun like a top? You are a veteran of a war nobody else knows exists, and you have no one to share your scars with. You think of the official response, the rational world's attempt to process such an event. You could go to the park rangers. You could tell them your story. What would they do? They would listen patiently, a practiced look of concern on their faces. They would file a report. The report would use words like disoriented, dehydrated, possible hallucinatory episode. They would check you for signs of injury or exposure. They might even send a ranger or two to walk the trail to look for the new path you described. And they would find nothing. There is no physical evidence. The scratches on your arms are from ordinary thorns. Your exhaustion is from getting lost. Your story is just that, a story, a campfire tale. There is no proof. The forest is a perfect criminal. It leaves no trace. This is a common, heartbreaking theme in accounts of the paranormal. The evidence is almost always purely testimonial, deeply personal, and therefore easily dismissed. The entities or places that create these experiences seem to have a built-in, plausible deniability clause, ensuring that the witness is left not only traumatized, but also isolated and discredited. You will not go to the Rangers. You start the car. The engine turning over is a roar that makes you jump. As you pull out of the parking lot, you glance in your rearview mirror. You see the dark wall of the redwood forest, silhouetted against the deepening twilight. For a moment, you think you see a flicker of movement in the shadows, a tall, slender shape detaching itself from a tree trunk. But you know it's just your traumatized mind playing tricks on you. You hope it island. The lingering question that settles in your gut as you drive away is one of evidence and belief. Without proof, did it really happen? If an event leaves no trace on the physical world, does it exist only in the mind of the person who experienced it? You know what you saw. You know what you felt. The warmth of the humming stone was real. The terror of the vanishing path was real. But without a single piece of corroborating evidence, you are faced with a terrible choice. You either have to accept that you are the sole witness to a genuine tear in the fabric of reality, or you have to accept that you had a profound psychotic break. A glitch in the universe, or a glitch in your own brain. Which is the more comforting explanation, and which is the more terrifying? Years will pass. You will move away from the coast, putting hundreds of miles of concrete, steel, and prairie between you and that redwood forest. You will build a new life, a loud life, filled with the deliberate noise of traffic, of crowds, of a television that is always on. You will surround yourself with the mundane, with the predictable, with the solid, reassuring weight of a world that follows its own rules. But you will never truly escape the silence. It is a part of your cellular makeup now. The experience has become a secret, a locked room in the architecture of your mind. You will never speak of it. How could you? The words themselves feel inadequate, insane. There was a path that wasn't there. This silence was a presence. The shadows herded me. These are the sentences of a madman or a liar. To speak them aloud would be to invite ridicule, pity, the quiet dismissal of people who live their lives on the safe, solid ground of consensus reality. So you keep the silence. You honor it with your own. But the question of what happened that day continues to be the central, unresolved mystery of your existence. Was it a place? A genuine physical location with its own bizarre ecosystem and its own hostile inhabitants? A bubble of another dimension that temporarily intersected with our own? This idea is compelling. It aligns with theories of parallel universes, of wormholes, of places where the laws of physics are different. It suggests you were a traveler, an unwitting astronaut who breached a foreign shore and, by some miracle, managed to return. Or was it a hallucination, a complex, hyper-realistic waking dream triggered by some unknown environmental factor? Perhaps an infrasound frequency generated by a strange geological formation known to cause feelings of dread and visions. Perhaps the spores of a rare psychoactive fungus released by those blood-red mushrooms on the repeating log. This explanation is more scientific, more rational. It keeps the world intact. It means the monster was not in the woods, but inside your own head. But in some ways, this is a more terrifying thought. If your own mind can construct a prison so perfect, so detailed, and so utterly convincing, then you can never, ever trust your own perception again. You are living in a house built by an unreliable architect. Or was it something else? Something more profound and more unsettling than either of those options? Was it an interaction? Not with a place, but with a consciousness, an intelligence. The ancient, vast, and utterly alien mind of the forest itself. Was it a test? A warning? An attempt to communicate in the only language it knew, a language of silence, of fear, of spatial distortion, and ultimately, of a choice? You were led, you were broken down, you were guided to a place of power, and you were shown a way to leave. It was a journey, an initiation ritual. But to what end? What was the purpose of the ceremony? This last possibility is the one that haunts you the most. It implies that the universe is not just strange and random, but that it is actively, intelligently strange. It means that there are things, consciousnesses, that are aware of us, that sometimes reach out and touch a single, unsuspecting person for reasons we can never hope to comprehend. You were, for a day, a lab rat. But you were also, for a moment, standing on holy ground, feeling the hum of the universe in your bones. You will never go back to that forest. You will never hike alone again. The awe you once felt for the wilderness has been replaced by a deep and abiding fear, a respect born not of love, but of terror. You know what lies sleeping just beneath the surface of the world's beautiful places. You know what kind of invitations can be offered in the quiet moments. And you are left with the one question that can never be answered. The question that will echo in the silent moments of your life until the day you die. Was that path a doorway into another world, or was it a doorway into the deeper, wilder, and more terrifying parts of yourself? Were you running from the forest, or were you running from a part of your own soul that was ready to walk away forever? The memory of the forest path never truly fades, but softens into the texture of a recurring, low-grade fever dream that whispers at the edges of your waking world. It is a constant, quiet hum beneath the noise of your carefully constructed life, a reminder of the fragility of the map you navigate by. The world remains solid. The sun continues to rise and set in a predictable and comforting rhythm, and the laws of physics hold steady. Yet, you carry the knowledge of their local suspension, the awareness that the rigid rules of reality are more like a gentleman's agreement, and that you once stumbled into a place where that agreement had been, for a time, politely but firmly rescinded. You find yourself watching people, your friends, your colleagues, strangers on the street, and you see them moving through their lives with a beautiful, blissful ignorance of how thin the ice beneath their feet truly island. You sometimes feel a pang of something like envy for their certainty, for their unquestioning faith in the solidness of the world. But it is always followed by a quiet, lonely sense of responsibility, the burden of the returned traveler who has seen the sea monsters on the edge of the map and can never again look at the ocean as just a body of water. The echoes of the silence are still there, in the moments between breaths, in the dead of night, a faint and sibilant whisper promising a reality just one step sideways from your own, a path that is always waiting, just out of sight, for the moment you stop looking for it.